Whatever, Trevor. It's nice to be back.
It is nice to be back. Thank you, Andrew, for joining me tonight. We are doing my consequence film. Now, last year, I did my Oscar picks, and people suggested films they thought were, for them, rough to watch or bad films or whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I only got two wrong. So one of the films that I ended up having to watch as a consequence was The Wash, and that
Wow.
was almost a year ago. And I'm finally getting around to reviewing it because it's been a year. It has been a year. But thank you, Mr. Andrew Shearer, for joining me to talk about The Wash because, yeah, 2001, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and a number of other familiar faces that work with those two individuals in what I thought was going to be a remake of Car Wash, but this really isn't, is it?
No, no, the Wash is kind of a buddy comedy in the vein of Friday. And matter of fact, it's written and directed by the person that wrote Friday.
With the best name, DJ Pooh.
That's right. That's right. He made one movie before this, the year before this, or a couple of years before this, called Three Strikes. And I
Mhm.
feel like either you and I or me and Derek Carey did a thing about that.
Mhm.
Probably from requests from me. Like every like I find myself on these shows usually because there's a list of like terrible things or like the worst movies or the bottom of something or whatever, and uh, I'm usually on a fan of those and probably have them in my personal library, like I do with both of DJ Pooh's first two movies. I think after The Wash, he didn't direct anything until 2017. I saw it on a list, but I didn't. I'm like, I don't think I saw it, but still, I watched the Wash a lot. Like it's one of my favorite comedies of that era.
Yeah, and it's basically what is now I was trying to catch the relationship between Dr. Dre's character Sean and Snoop Dogg's was it not Tone Loc, Dom
C-Loke or something
CeeLo.
like D-Loke,
Yeah, D-Loc, that's what it is.
one of those.
D-Loc and
Yeah,
Sean.
yeah.
Were they related? Was Sean his uncle or were they just buds?
They were friends. They're roommates. And what
Okay, they're
happened
just yeah.
was that Sean loses his job at Foot Locker, and the rent is coming up, and so he's like, you need to come down to where I work at the car wash and get a job there, and that way, we can make the rent and everything will work out. And Sean was a manager at Foot Locker, and so at first he's like, this doesn't want to do it, but he goes in, and turns out the manager is none other than Atlanta, Georgia's George Wallace. We got a couple of Atlanta's finest comedians there because Bruce plays the security guard.
Oh, that's who that was. I was trying to remember. I was trying to
Yeah,
figure out. Yeah.
if you watched BET Comic View in the '90s, you were very familiar with George Wallace and with Bruce. But anyways, he ends up getting a job there, and that's what starts the conflict in their relationship. Is because they go from friends to coworkers, and they start to experience difficulties in their friendship because Sean is now D-Loke's boss.
Well, and Sean's more of the straight arrow of the two. I mean,
Well, it's Dr. Dre, who he wasn't in very many movies at all. He's mostly done a ton of music videos. I think
yeah.
he was in Training Day. He had a part in
Mhm.
Training Day. And there was one other movie that he did where he had a significant, or not significant, but definitely like a good role around this time. But he didn't stick with acting.
No, no, it and I mean, I liked his character. He plays it pretty straight. A lot of the comedy and such comes from Snoop Dogg,
Yeah.
obviously, because Snoop Dogg's just natural. He's just natural. His character is just natural at that.
Oh yeah.
And so I liked the dynamic between them. I liked how but you could tell Dr. Dre was a bit out of his element acting in, in the film.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
He you think about him in real life, he goes from being Uber producer and the
yeah.
boss of everything in the music world. I mean, now he's a billionaire.
Mhm.
So in terms of him wanting to compete with his former NWA colleague Ice Cube, in terms of the movie world, yeah, well, okay, Cube might have had the better acting career, but, Dre, like, won everything because he's the richest out of all of them. But, yeah, that put he and Snoop and everybody really, but definitely he and Snoop on, more of a, level,
Mhm.
playing field because they were both entering the acting world, and they weren't neither of them was, the boss of that. I think Dre may have been a producer on the film, but
Mhm.
that didn't mean he, was the director of the movie, by any means.
And given their real life roles, though, Snoop Dogg just seemed more natural into the acting and entertainment than
Yeah.
because
Well, Snoop is an entertainer, period. He's
he
great.
is.
I don't know if you've caught his new movie, The Underdogs, on Prime Video.
Not yet, no.
My god, that movie is great. It's and
Mhm.
plus he's just a great actor because, you know, when D-Lo starts to become angry and
Yeah.
frustrated with Sean as his boss, you start to see Snoop can play a bad guy really well. He can play good guys and likable guys. I mean, he's so much fun. If you've ever seen him narrate nature videos, for example, it's a beautiful thing. But John Singleton's Baby Boy is probably a great example where
Mhm.
Snoop plays the meanest guy. I mean, he is the heavy in that movie. And I think his name was Rodney and
Mhm.
Baby Boy. Man, he's mean. And then of
Well,
course
that
you have Bones, a horror movie where he was the lead. He's more of a like protagonist and
Mhm.
antagonist in Bones. It's a great role and a great movie. But
Oh, yeah, Bones is fun, and in this one, I think it caught me a little off guard because he gets a little bit of that,
mhm,
a darker side of his character when he
right,
starts just pushing Sean going, "I need my half of the rent,"
yep,
and getting scary, and that surprised me. It threw me off just a little bit because I'm used to a little bit more, rolling with its sort of character, and
or
when
laid back,
a
yeah.
little laid back, and then seeing him get, tense with Sean, that was throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
definitely very different dynamic than, say, Craig and Smokey or
mhm,
Craig and Day Day and Friday because, you got the straight man, the comic relief, but Ice Cube is also very funny. Um,
yeah,
Dre is, I think, naturally funny because he and Snoop have such a good camaraderie as friends,
mhm.
and I think that chemistry comes across in The Wash. But, for a guy that smokes as much weed as Snoop does in the movie, he certainly is a pretty pissed off guy most of the
He
time.
he is. I noticed that he's pissed off at a lot of things, but
Oh god, yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
I
and he's
I
dealing while he's working there too, which is,
yeah,
"How do you
well,
think I already have enough money for the rent?"
yeah. Yeah, and the whole cast of characters they get in here is a lot of
Oh,
fun.
yeah. Yeah.
There is the spirit of Car Wash is you have, a diverse group of characters that just come through the wash.
Mhm.
There's the love interest for Sean, which doesn't last long thanks to D-Loke's two lady.
Oh my god, they are so at each other, through the whole thing, 'cause, D'Lo could get fired by Sean,
Yeah.
technically now as the manager, and a matter of fact, Mr. Wash, George Wallace's character, really leaves it up to, Sean as to what he wants to do to him, and
Uh,
then so meanwhile, at every chance he can get, D-Lo is getting in the way of Sean's romantic pursuits. He's getting in the way of his ability to even sleep by turning up the stereo while he's trying to be in there sleeping. And yeah, definitely at work too. But even then, no one warns him about eating the burrito first day on the job. He
yeah.
wasn't even employed yet. He just came
No.
in for the interview and he eats a burrito off this taco truck. He calls it the Roach Coach.
The roach coach.
And he gets explosive diarrhea from eating that.
Mm.
He's like, "Didn't I tell you?" Like, "Actually, no, no one told him. He just let him eat it."
I loved George Wallace in this, and, since this is the final cut, we aren't spoiling too much here, but I'm just gonna say this starts to take this takes a turn of an, like, late '90s comedy to where
Mhm.
it just gets kind of absurd where you have kidnappers involved, the two dumbest kidnappers, which
They're
were hilarious.
those guys are great. One of them is played by DJ Pooh.
Yeah.
My favorite scene, I think, with them is when, what they're trying to do is that those guys do, successfully, manage to kidnap someone, and so the people at the wash have to then come up with a plan to get, that person back, and, um, the kidnappers are so dumb that at one point, and I don't know the character's name that DJ Pooh plays, but, um, they call and pretend they're from the Census Bureau, and and and, uh and Pooh is, like, on the phone, he's like, "Shh, it's the Census Bureau."
Yeah.
He's trying to say bureau, but he can't. And he's like, "What? It's the Census Bureau."
Brr.
They're like, Don't tell them I'm here, I don't want people knowing I'm in this house." Using real names around the
Yeah.
person that they kidnapped. And there but also you've got then, someone who very famous. The movie has a lot of famous people from the hip hop world that should not be surprised to anyone.
Mhm.
Ludacris is in there, Exhibit
Yeah.
is in there, Eminem is in there. You also got Shaq at one point who shows up and punches the absolute crap out of Lamont Bentley, who, played. Do you remember in Tales from the Hood, this one segment about a gangster who ends up going to hell?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's Lamont. I think his name's Lamont Bentley, but
Yeah, it is. Mhm.
he plays a character in the movie too that's just one of the car wash people that, like, steals change and stuff like that. He unfortunately, yeah, he died in a car accident,
Mm.
in his early 30s, I would say within 5 or so years after The Wash was made. Very talented actor, but
Yeah, he was. He
that's
was
the character that he played. But, I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm not sure
his
if I
character named C Money
Yeah,
was some
and they all have those names on their name tags
Yeah.
too. No real names, just all these, like, just like nomenclature or whatever you got. It's really good. But,
And they even get a Tiny Lister in here
that's
as
right.
well.
Tiny is in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's he's in there on a condition of parole, or if I didn't have to stay in this halfway house.
I
Yeah.
love I always loved Tiny.
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought
he could play anything.
he could play anything, he had a lot of fun, and it was always fun seeing when he'd pop up in a movie, and
Yeah, and he brought that authenticity every single time too.
you could tell he was just having fun being there, whatever
Mhm.
role he's in, he's just enjoying being there,
Yeah,
you
absolutely,
know?
and, I mean, what a presence that he had. But, I, I mean, what were do you know why? I mean, did the movie do poorly at the box office, or what happened?
I'm not sure offhand. I think this might even went direct to video. I don't know if
No,
this well,
it played in the
I'm
theater, I saw it.
oh, you did? Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm not sure what happened, but I mean, we're talking 2001?
yeah,
Uh,
I remember
you know,
it came out after 9/11. I remember because,
it
um
yeah, it did not actually hit the States like the big state until March 12th of 2002.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I just remember around that time when it came out that, um, it was kind of like the around when COVID hit. I really wanted just to see comedies. I wasn't really trying to watch anything, like, real depressing, heavy, or violent,
Yeah.
and so The Wash was just the timing of it was just great, I remember thinking, and, I'm f Car Wash is to me more like a kind of almost like a musical.
It
Um
is. The soundtrack is fantastic, and like I
Yeah,
said, Eminem showing up as the crazy
the
ex-employee,
the
I didn't
terrorist
expect
Chris.
that.
Yeah, and M's parts for the most of the movie, you could tell they just went to, filmed him in some hotel room, or maybe it was his room, I don't
It
know,
might have been his hotel room, who knows?
making all those threats, but he does actually at one point show up for real
Mhm.
in a scene, in a great scene. Um, but it's yeah, it's interesting to me to think that it was in a list of, like, you have to watch it as punishment. Because did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it misses a couple steps, say, from Friday.
Oh, definitely.
It's not quite there. It has that spirit. I like the energy. I like, uh I liked it when it started getting into its own skin.
Mhm.
a little bit more. You know, at the beginning, it felt a little bit more upfront, like, oh, look, here is Snoop Dogg. Oh, he smokes, you know, he, you know, but after they taper off a bit and they get into the story, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed all the characters in it. I had fun with it. I was laughing out loud, and Wallace just, oh, such a
Yeah.
brilliant,
His
brilliant comedian, man.
his Twitter, I think, was listed on Rolling Stone in, like, the top 25 accounts to follow, and he is
Yeah.
so, so brilliant. Um, I think I agree with you, the way if I was gonna describe the difference between the way The Wash feels and the way that Friday or any of the
Mhm.
Friday movies feel, but for the purposes of this, the first Friday since DJ Pooh wrote that, I think I would have to say that Friday feels more written down and spoken
Mhm.
in terms of an act from an acting point of view, whereas The Wash feels more like the script was sort of an outline, and a lot of people are, like, getting more chance to kind of play within,
Right.
the outline, because, like, George Wallace is funny, naturally funny, and the idea of him sticking to some words written for him, I think everyone took what might have I can't say because I wasn't on the set, but it feels more like people took what was on the page and then just did their own thing with it, whereas with Friday, you had people that were, maybe memorizing dialogue and things like that.
It did feel a little bit more freestyle.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, you know, to sum up, I'm glad that it was my consequence film because it wasn't on my radar. I
Mhm.
watched it, I enjoyed it. I could see where some people where it might be rough because it is a little bit more freestyle. It is a little bit more there is a linear narrative there, but it is almost like scenes put together versus like a full story from
Yeah.
start, you know, until you get to like the third act. So I can see how that would put some people off. But I had fun. I mean, if you like the other work from DJ Pooh, I would recommend it. What would you say, sir? Final
Oh,
thought.
definitely. It feels
Mhm.
like they had a blast making it. You can tell they had a blast making it, and therefore, you can't help but have a blast watching it.
Exactly. So thank you, folks. Look for my consequence film video next week, where I'll be picking my choices for the Oscars. And this time around, though, I'm going a little different. Worst movies ever type of approach is definitely for the realm of our good friend Mr. Derek Carey. Which, if you haven't checked out his Patreon yet, he does worst movies ever. It's a great podcast to listen to him really go through some of these films. But what I have done is approached a few people I know, and I'll be approaching a few more before the live stream of where I'm choosing my Oscars picks. We're going with romantic comedies, namely Hallmark films, as my consequences. Because if you want
Yeah,
to talk about something completely out of the realm of Mark the Movie Man, we're talking rom coms and Hallmark movies.
way
That
to
that
go.
is not a genre. So rather than picking the worst movies out there, because I actually enjoy worst watching some really bad movies, we're going with completely outside of my wheelhouse genre. So that's what you got to look forward to. Sorry this took so long to drop. Hope you enjoyed this discussion, folks. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe and like and all that. And check out Mr. Gonzoriffic and his stuff. Andrew, really quick, sir, go ahead and plug stuff for the Final Cut viewers out there.
Oh, okay, right now, I have a book out. Last year, I wrote a book called Everybody's, Everybodies, and this is available on Amazon. Look me up, Andrew Shearer, or look up Everybody's. Make sure you spell it with bodies. That's an interview and photography book that came out in January.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, sir. And remember, folks, until next time, keep that ticket stub.